It's Rick Harrison, and Rick is he has pioneered neighborhood design methods and technologies that have been market proven in over 800 developments in 46 states and 18 countries. His 36 years in land development spans land planning, civil engineering, land surveying, architectural design, green building since 1983, GIS and precision mapping, and most importantly, software development and market-proven innovation. He's also the author of a book, Prefurbia, Reinventing Land Development, and many other works. And we're glad to have him here again.
Hey, thanks. I'm not going to make a phone call. I'm just using this to time myself to make sure that I don't go too long. We talked a lot about today on transportation, a lot of other issues. I'm going to talk a little bit about sprawl. We're going to sprawl. That's the nature of growth. It's the quality of sprawl. When you look at suburban land development, developers, private developers, develop the suburbs. They do not design the suburbs generally. They hire a consultant who is typically a civil engineer or surveyor to design the suburbs. That consultant goes to the ordinance minimums, and they think their job is to squeeze every inch out of that site, to squeeze as many units to those ordinance minimums to keep the client happy. And with that, we've developed kind of cookie cutter unsustainable growth that has been fuel for attack to new urbanists and say this is a better movement. There's some issues I made some notes on from the speeches here, and if I have time I'll address those. Let's see, this is not advancing. Oh, okay. Again, since the birth of the suburbs in the 1950s, we got this kind of cookie-cutter design. I started planning almost 45 years ago. Everything was done by hand. Since we had computers, computers now automate, and we depend too much on computers, and we started noticing that planning has gotten worse, not better. So in 1993, we established a planning firm to try to discover new methods. I had a software company that served engineers and land surveyors. And with that, the collection of methods that you'll see, just a Cliff Note version of it, but the collection of methods we call Prefurbia, which is the title of our book, which is available back there. And the software, we're still in the software business, and that's Land Mentor. When you look at our first discovery that got us attention, it was a method called coving. I just want to explain what that's about. When you traditionally look at land development, the job of the person planning that development, they think, is to fill that site up with stuff. That's what they're getting paid for. Inadvertently, they fill the site up with road. What coving does is significantly reduce the amount of road and keeps the density. That's what coving does, and I want to explain a little bit on how it does that. We have a demonstrated average 25% reduction of infrastructure cost. When you reduce the road, you have more green space for people, and that's what suburban people want. They want space. They want a nice house that is not, that's unique, that's substantial. Before coving, those bubbles along corners exist all over the world. That's a $40,000 piece of pavement to serve those homes. Why does it exist? Anybody here know why? Why would it? Frontage, right. So what happens is, in order to stretch that setback line, you read the ordinance, this is Omaha, it has a 20-foot deep front yard setback, so in order to get those homes in there, you must build a $40,000 piece of pavement. But the ordinances never said that. The ordinances have this magic word minimum. You can go beyond the minimums. So it's the concept of exceeding the minimums to gain efficiency. So that magic word exists in every ordinance around the world. So it's not the minimum dimension, it's the optimum dimension that we see. So it's this idea of separating what happens with the road and the home front. Here's another thing, and you know, there's a big thing against cul-de-sacs, and depending if you're in Virginia or not, it's really big. What is the logic on a cul-de-sac. What's the logic on the radius of a cul-de-sac? Anybody know? Fire truck. That's it, no other logic. And everybody goes to the absolute minimums on the cul-de-sac to create the fewest number of premium lots. So what you've got is less premium lots, but if we make everything bigger, if we just spread everything further apart and make that street one way, because that's how you're going to drive around the street anyhow, you actually get a ratio of pavement per home that's more efficient than an urban grid. You pick up a park in the middle. You extend that walk going through the rest of the neighborhood, make it wide enough for an emergency vehicle to travel on. Now you've taken away the argument that a cul-de-sac is a closed loop. If you do a good job of tapering the driveways, you reduce the impervious surface, and it's the exact same density. You've given up nothing. So it's only a gain. This is an example of using the right dimension. Who wouldn't want to live in front of the park over there, or who wouldn't want to use the drainage on a development, low impact, and just eliminate the curb and just have one inlet? So you take a negative and make it a positive. And not only that, you have increased that premium for the cul-de-sac considerably more, and you could build less cul-de-sacs, which means it's more efficient because you don't have a lot of these streets leading to the cul-de-sac. The big thing is, where would you rather live? For snow removal, instead of going on the outside, which is a real problem, you would go on the inside into the island. So it solves that problem. We're from Minneapolis, and that's a big problem with snow. But the key thing is, at any income level, instead of looking 100 or 110 or 20 foot right across your neighbor, the line of sight within the home is considerably greater. So not only does it feel a lot less dense as you go down the neighborhood, and that's what people move to the suburbs for. They move to the suburbs so that they can get away from the density of the city and have that place for their own. So not only does it feel less dense without losing density, but when you're in the home, if you plan this right, you have much better views. And because it's all spread out, we can easily conform to the topography of the land, less earthwork and less drainage problems. This is an example in Albertville. This is K. Hovnanian homes. These homes went up and they sold after the market crashed. In fact, they sold so fast, they sold out before K. Hovnanian had a huge fire sale to get rid of their homes. But this is a flare. Oop. Okay. Something weird happened. This is a flare where the homes leave the street entirely. You have a little bit longer a lot longer driveway. But this home has views around this home, and each one of these homes, if you can see those side windows, that means that side window gets a view of space. So they actually coordinated the living space and windows to what was happening to the homes. That's why the home sold so fast. It's an attention to detail. And then as you go down the street, there's this huge amount of space, and otherwise these wetlands and ponding areas would be hidden from view. Here's a problem. Initial design of a site. There isn't a single university that we have found in the U.S. that teaches urban planning, engineering, architecture, where all the students work on the same project. Not one. This is the way the industry works. So in order to create sustainable growth, we have to turn the industry to work like this at the initial design stages. And that's something that we're working on in our attempts to improve the world. Architectural shaping, what does that mean? Until the 50s, all homes were a rectangle and a rectangle. With the birth of the suburbs, you had two new shapes, outside pie shape, inside pie shape. Yet every surveyor, engineer will look at that home as only a rectangle. And they don't even look at the home until that's the last thing that they look at. But in the pursuit of density, that's a brand new development in Fargo. That's a worst case scenario. You can't get much narrower than that. In the pursuit of density, homes get narrower. They get narrower, they get deeper. So if they get deeper, what happens is you lose your window space looking at your quality views and you're looking right in the neighbor. So that's the problem with urban densities in the suburbs. What if that development, though, had curved streets or coved lots? What you can do is use that side yard we've always been able to use on the inside or outside of that curve. And we've always been able to use that. We're not breaking a single regulation that exists in any of these solutions. That's the beauty of it. We're not asking for anything. Whoa. Anyhow, and now you've got a much more sellable and livable home. We're talking about livability. We talked about greenhouse gases and all that stuff. Let's start talking about livability and value, quality of life. These were what we call bay homes. When people plan neighborhoods, you see little rooftops, things like that. But let's pay attention. We got the technology to pay attention to what happens inside the home and how does that relate to views outside the home. So we did about 8,000 of these over the years before the recession stopped everything. But with the bay home, I'll explain it. The reason it was called a bay home was the open spaces had a bay-like shape. But we use multifamily standards. We go multifamily zoning. We just detach the homes. So people would rather have their own home than attached. And the key thing is, in the U.S., people hang out in the kitchen, so we want an open floor plan from the kitchen to get a panoramic view so you don't look at your neighbor and you think you're in a low-density home. These things tend to look like new urban homes. We like to have a full front porch. It's not like, you know, there's certain values in new urbanism that actually do work, and we like to have walks connecting the neighborhoods. And they're a nice-looking home. Very easy to plat. So with architectural blending in the bay homes, we were thinking, why not every home? Because, you know, you could buy a Pulte or Toll Brothers or whatever home, and they don't connect the spaces together. But what would happen to the quality of living if you did at any income scale? So I'm talking about low and high income. You're improving the quality of life and you're improving the living experience. Land use. That's a big one. We're talking about land use. That's the title of this. In the suburbs, because of, I guess, Levittown or something, this is typical. This is a major builder. They put their cheapest housing at your front door. Then you go to your next cheapest housing, then you get your single family home. So suburbs kind of look cheaper than they actually are because the upper end stuff is buried in there. Why not reverse it? Why not bring the nice housing at your front door and then in the pockets in the back, nicer home. So then people in the lower income housing, they feel great about themselves. Look at the neighborhood they drive in and out. And we're talking about suburban density, so we're not talking like urban traffic and flows anyhow. We've been doing that for about 13 years. We've never had a developer that said, no, that doesn't make sense. We never had a city that said, no, that doesn't make sense. Just real quick, how much time do I have? Let's see. I'm good? Oops.
Your phone just broke.
Yeah. That's all right. Okay, another 10 minutes. Case studies. This is Altoona, Wisconsin's town center. They hired us after they saw one of the plans that we submitted. This is what they were going to approve. After all these new urban, sense of place, and all these documents and all these meetings, this is what they had approved for their town center. So that's new urbanism. When we look at the plan, we put it through our technology so we can actually run the numbers. And we get a nice 3D view of it, which no one saw a 3D view of what that will really look like. Look at the parking. Why? Look at that. This is from an engineering firm. A 200-man engineering firm produced this plan. You have very little parking, but tons of pavement. You park, it doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you park on the other side of that piece of pavement and triple the amount of parking? Is it because cars are evil and we're not supposed to walk? This is Altoona, Wisconsin. It gets like snow in winter. So we got a job to redesign it. First thing in redesigning any neighbor or designing any neighborhood, I don't care if it's a town center or residential, draw the walks first. You cannot create a walkable neighborhood until you design the walks first. If you design the walks later, it will not be walkable because the streets and the walking should be two different patterns. So we created a plaza, a town center on this, and then as we put in the uses, you want to know what those uses are as you drive down the perimeter. Oh, there's actually a center of this. I could see it. Let me drive into this thing. And also, again, the views on the condos. You want to maximize the number of units that have a good view. Use the least amount of pavement possible to get to where you want to go. Streets are your evil thing. Just the least amount of linear foot of street. And with that, we had considerably more parked cars with the exact same impervious surface coverage. So you have a much more functional and attractive town center. In this case, it didn't cost less because our typical development's about 25% less infrastructure cost, but this is different. We want to create function. Here's another one. This is Colorado Springs area military housing. Developer, you know, this is not upper end housing. This is the military families. And can anybody tell me where the waste is in that design? Anybody? Let me show you. This street from here to here, there's no frontage on half that street. Here to here, no frontage on half that street. No frontage on half that street. When you start adding all this up, there's about 40% of the street that's not fully fronted. That's at $300 a linear foot. That is a tremendous amount of impact and money. So again, when we start looking at a CAD-based world where they're using offsets and automated lots, it doesn't necessarily follow the topography. So the first thing we do again, figure out how we're going to walk around the neighborhood. The walking highway systems, that's that 10-foot wide trail that connects the neighborhood. And then design a street pattern that will get you home with one turn or less to minimize time and energy as you go through the neighborhood. There's no monotony on here because there's no two places that are alike. So we're eliminating a lot of problems. We are putting meandering walks along the sides of the streets. And you end up with a neighborhood that's more like a piece of art to live in, that's cheaper to develop, much lower cost to develop than what they were going to develop. So that means, what do you do with all that money? That's what paid for that 10-foot wide trail. That's what pays for better landscaping, better architecture, and that's what pays for more efficient housing as far as energy use. So what we're wanting to do is take those funds that were saved that you would have put in dirt and put it into a higher end housing at any price point. Again, the average cove development saves 25%. This was 29.9%. Do you want to hand me my little notes there? The notes, the piece of paper. Yeah. All right. Just wanted to make a couple points. When we work on new methods and new technologies, and this has been a 23-year process, the main thing is livability issues and come up with an idea that does not increase costs. So there's a lot of parallels with new urbanism. You know, we want walkability, we want attractive neighborhoods, but new urbanism, when you go on the Congress of New Urbanism website, they boast about gentrification. Gentrification is not affordable unless someone subsidized it, unless you people paid for it. Gentrification, what happened to all those poor minority families that lived in the gentrification? Where's the articles that say what's the quality of their life? You know, what's the improvement? It's not good for the poor. It doesn't do anything for them. They brushed aside, maybe into the suburbs. What's interesting is we have 300 developer clients that has essentially financed everything. In the 23 years we tried to talk with government, the only politician that's helped us has been Al Franken in 23 years. One politician. And he got us approved at the regional planning grants of HUD just when they dried out. There was a $300 million grant option. Because the Sustainable Communities Initiative has realized that pushing new urbanism in these suburban areas is not effective. You could push it all you want. You're not going to convince these people to put people in high rises when they live 30 miles out of the city. So we had a viable solution, but we never really did anything with it because we were just in time in 2010 for those grants to disappear. But that's basically a cliff note of the presentation. Thank you.